today's video, we'll be considering the components of hyperopia, a very simple concept to understand. So the part 1 of the video will highlight all the components of hyperopia, and for part 2, we will deal with some calculation aspects. So if nothing at all, I know you've heard of something called latent hyperopia. Latent hyperopia. And we also have manifest hyperopia. We also have something called facultative hyperopia. And also have something called absolute hyperopia. And we have another one too called total hyperopia. So latent hyperopia, manifest hyperopia, facultative hyperopia, absolute hyperopia, and total hyperopia. But the question is, what are these? So in this very video, we are going to make it very simple to understand. Now let's start with something called latent hyperopia as a component of hyperopia. So let's start with latent hyperopia. But before we talk of latent hyperopia, we need to know some kind of anatomy and physiology and something about accommodation about the eye. Now, this is the eyeball. See, so here the lens is flatter. Here, this structure is called the lens. Let's do some aspect. This is the lens. You know, this is the lens. Okay, this is the lens, the crystalline lens. You know, this thing here, this structure is holding the lens to the ciliary muscle is called the ciliary zonules. So I also have here another ciliary zonules, isn't it? Good. So ciliary zonules, and I have this structure here called ciliary muscle. Okay, so this is called my ciliary muscle, and this is so called ciliary muscle, and this is my iris and my cornea and all that. You understand? So here the lens is flatter, but looking at here, the lens is thicker and has moved more forward. Looking at here, this lens has gone backward. So here the lens is flatter here. So here, when that happens, we say accommodation is relaxed. So here, accommodation is relaxed. But here, you see the lens has become thicker and move forward. That means accommodation is stimulated here. So here, accommodation stimulated. It's very simple as that. Okay. Now, whenever accommodation is relaxed, the point is this ciliary muscle, okay, this ciliary muscle relaxes. So here the ciliary muscle has relaxed. So ciliary muscle relaxes, has relaxed, and then this one, the ciliary zonules has only fibers in matrix. Let me say contracted. So when accommodation is relaxed, now whenever accommodation is stimulated, the ciliary muscle ever contracted. So accommodation means stimulated. Have my ciliary muscle here contracting, and then the zonules. When the zonules, no, I BBC like this. That means I so relaxed. So the ciliary zonules, no, the moment, So the take home is that whenever I am looking at far, whenever I'm looking at far, this is what happens. So whenever I'm looking at far, accommodation is relaxed, and that means that my ciliary muscle is relaxed, and ciliary zonules are rather contracting. But whenever I'm looking from far to near, whenever I look at near, my ciliary zonules relaxes and my ciliary muscles contracts and bring the lens more forward and make the lens more thicker, so that it increases the power of the eye to look at things at near. So the take home is that with accommodation being stimulated, or whenever I look from far to near, okay, ciliary muscle contracts. Now me zonules no, ciliary zonules no, then I relax it. This is accommodation, and this increases the power of the lens and then bring the light rays from far to near. See, for instance, if I say light rays, no, I'll say with looking at fan, the light rays, whenever I accommodate the power of the eye helps the light rays to bring them more forward, and the light rays will come a bit forward when the accommodation means stimulated. For instance, let me give a very critical example. Let's say I have this eye here. Okay, this eye is here. Whenever let's say I'm not accommodating, my light rays will focus somewhere here. Okay, but whenever I accommodation bring the light rays more forward. So once I was saying me accommodate you, but whenever I accommodate, a treat light rays ni benny to once I say about light rays abasi. So the more accommodate, the more the light rays are focused in front of the retina. Sorry, in front of the eye. You understand? With accommodation not being stimulated, me accommodate light rays ne focus so as. But when I accommodate, it brings the focus of the light rays more forward. You understand? That is accommodation. So you need to know this about accommodation. That with normal eye being relaxed, not accommodating, I have my lens being flatter. But with accommodation, my lens becomes thicker, and it increases the power of the eye and bring the light rays more forward. That is accommodation. Now let's look at hyperopia. Now what is hyperopia? So let's look at the concept of hyperopia. Now the point is that there is a mismatch with hyperopia and myopia. Even myopia, there is a mismatch between the power of the eye and the axial length. Of the eye. In actual sense, for emmetropes who are having no refractive error, the power of the eye coincides or correlates with the axial length. That is why they're able to see very well. Let me say this is the eye, and this is. Now, in actual sense, if the power of my eye is matching with the axial length, the length of the eyeball, and my power of the eye is matching with the axial length, then incoming light rays need to focus on the retina for me to see very well. But in hyperopia, there's a mismatch between the power of the eye and the axial length. So this is how it happens. So this is the eyeball, but because there is a mismatch between the axial length and the power of the eye, incoming light rays are focused behind the retina. But the point is that I need this light rays to focus on the retina for me to see very well. But since I focus behind the retina, I'm not going to see clearly. That is the concept for hyperopia. So incoming light rays are focused behind the retina. Now note, very important. On say the ciliary muscle, even if we are not accommodating, it tends to maintain a tone, and it is always present. In fact, not about this is not about accommodation, not about accommodation. On the medical can you see I'm funny say that means hyperopes can try and accommodate into because say by accommodation, you bring the income light rays more forward. It is a hyperope, income light rays not fall at the back of the eye there. Say me accommodate here. One income light rays in towards the retina. But for Slayer's it has no any about accommodation. You say, oh, what's one can accommodate here? The Slayer's maintaining a tone and it's always present. So we're going to talk about that. The point is that the ciliary muscle, okay, ciliary muscle are correcting about +1 diopter ds of the hyperopia. And then but this is a small amount, so this small amount of hyperopia being corrected is called latent hyperopia. Into micillary muscle me accommodate crown correcting my hyperopia ni bi. Now for example let's say Mr. Alex of OD1 our hyperopia, okay, our hyperopia of let's say plus 5 ds diabetes. Now it's plus 5 no plus 1 because latent now say slemas no to me equal about plus 1 into plus 1. If I say Mr. Alex is in the hyperopia, now the hyperopia now in air plus 5. Now slemas no bet me take care of some hyperopia ni bi into about plus 1 ds of this hyperopia no can be corrected by this tone of ciliary muscle. I'm coming accommodate you of ciliary muscle, and that is called latent hyperopia. Into Mr. Alex, plus 5 dollars hyperop. Now me accommodate any she na me one me ciliary muscle no correct plus 1 me a minimum. Into no latent hyperopia. Into first one hospital, okay? Hospital. All right. Into that is that. Into fan say see Mr. Alex. The ciliary muscle are corrected plus 1 diabetes of the total hyperopia of this one. Let's I can plus 4 say it me every man yes good. Now we know it reviews after refraction. So I'm calling panel refraction after refraction. Benya plus 4 diabetes. Into we know is the hyperopia we see. The hyperopia we see after simple refraction. Into that one, it reviews what I call manifest hyperopia. So, into you say Mr. Alex, plus 5 diabetes hyperop. And I'm say, so plus 5 no, Mr. Alex on accommodate any share crown ciliary muscle no, correct plus 1 man. Our one now 1 year when plus 1 are corrected by the ciliary muscle automatically. That is called latent hyperopia, and that is plus 1. Always it's around plus 1. Now instead a corrected plus 1 there, let's like a plus 4 diabetes sphere. Inside plus 4 no, some coin fraction and you know and there plus 4 because latent in there they are corrected by the ciliary muscle. It's plus 4 na canon and I'm going after refraction. Into refraction is a plus 4 Mr. Laser and I'm manifesting, and that is called manifest hyperopia. Into some total hyperopia there. Total hyperopia there. That means a bear the latent hyperopia plus manifest hyperopia. And yes, simple as that. It's in total hyperopia there, a latent hyperopia. Ciliary muscle no a correct man no. And an kaya no mere fashion p by me and be manifest hyperopia. Into manifest no, then we form be now plus 4. And a latent in ciliary muscle correct and plus 1. Semi carry any mumbuma. Ni ciliary muscle not correct. And you mean and kabuma na total hyperopia. And yes, as simple as that. As simple as that. See, yanko breaking bra.
Fortune, I wish on you, not few, plenty bundles. I'm looking out for you wherever you are, wherever you stay.
Inti, this is latent hyperopia. Inti him say if that not all, you total hyperopia, and you latent hyperopia. ɛne ɛho manifest hyperopia ɛne ɛsɛ latent hyperopia deɛ sɛ nipa ne full error na ɔwɔ no sɛ deɛ +5 na ɛyɛ full a ɛne ɛyɛ total hyperopia no na mesilary muscle no ɛbɛtumi akoro tibia ma me baako about 1 diopter, and that is called latent hyperopia because I know now I headache kakra. What I say now, some refraction, the panel refractive, but refraction as a hyperopia, me who then +4, and now I'm manifesting the refraction because +1 the slime muscle no, I take care of that. Instead, me can yes slime muscle no, I take care of it, no, and then me can manifest the bone with ya, and then me total hyperopia of Mr. Alex. Simple as that. Simple as that. Simple as that. Right. Now, let's go to manifest hyperopia. Manifest hyperopia. Now, what is manifest? Manifest hyperopia, and you break it down into two. There facultative hyperopia and your absolute hyperopia. Into manifest hyperopia, and I break it down to two. One being facultative hyperopia and then absolute hyperopia. In the influence I say in Mr. Alex, there was some power to accommodate. In the accommodation here, and American cancer accommodation, no, a movie income like trees, no, a ben anymore. What I say, Mr. Alex now was some power, has some power to accommodate. Or some power to accommodate, yeah. You find that this is the eyeball. Okay, you find the eyeball. And an income light trees, no, because there's a mismatch between the refractive power and the AC length of the eyeball. Income light trees, no, be focused also behind the retina, and that is making Mr. Alex hyperop. Now let's see that Mr. Alex tries to bring back his rays. It is focused behind the retina to the retina. Even though you try to increase the power of curvature, increase the power of the lens, so that obeys accommodation and brings into one Mr. Alex the power of accommodation. So Alex can accommodation the movie light twist never in kakra and Alex a better retina someone. But Mr. Alex tries to accommodate or forces or accommodating that when to me I'm free now I'm a top retina so. Into my so it's me pia man better. Ah baby. What I say, to me, an accommodation effort. At Triama, I say there is income is not a focus, so I will try. So, this amount of hyperopia he corrected using his accommodation in terms of an accommodation effort. At my try movie and increase the curvature of the lens, I'm more to bring the income light rays, but when to me, I'm a two way and so, but I try to move it for a say, I'm to this point. Into this amount of hyperopia now, or then accommodation efforts are correct now. That is called facultative hyperopia. Into the amount of hyperopia now, waiting in accommodation effort, that is called facultative hyperopia. By a pattern also on the retina. So, Mariano, it nature say, into the amount of hyperopia car from here to the retina, no, other side from here to move to the retina, no, that is called the absolute hyperopia. Simple as that. Into this whole full thing made the eye hyperop. Nothing I focus on her. Between the accommodation efforts, estimating, but some better retina so. Baby, that becomes my facultative hyperopia. In Tiffany, never cover chinas and canning about a better so naka chance become my absolute hyperopia. In time, just a manifest hyperopia, no? Manifest hyperopia no, is equal to absolute hyperopia plus facultative hyperopia. As simple as that. In summary, now Mr. Pia, Mr. Lex, Mr. Lex, I work to hyperopia of +5 diabetes. And I'm saying, oh, accommodation, and I'm going to free freeze, right? Now, ciliary muscle, never the name ciliary muscle. Ciliary muscle, never the name, I correct +1. Our number one accommodation, ciliary muscle correct +1, and that is called latent hyperopia. Now, I'm going to fractions and listen me correcting with some sparkles be dependent fraction. For with refraction, no +4 diabetes. I didn't because ciliary muscle not correct about that. Into now can +4. Into the mere refraction, hyperopia miniano, and they manifest and I'm manifested and they manifest hyperopia. It's +4 becomes manifest. And a manifest you types. Manifest no. Manifest. You were facultative. And you were absolute. And I made sure saying finance higher retina. And I said income net is never force behind the retina. Mr. Lex between soon accommodation effort to be. It's that +4 with him now. Mr. P. Alex. A bit me so accommodation effort to be etimia chikakaba. Baby an accommodation effort no strong say be twa to wait na so. Balis a bit me aba beto at this point very close kakra. But is not able to move it very close to close to the retina on the retina. But the amount of accommodation being corrected by the accommodation effort etimia actually every beto as in. This amount of hyperopia is called the facultative hyperopia. Now the one left, I think at least can be for better retina. So the one left no is called the absolute hyperopia. So if I want to manifest hyperopia, it is the facultative hyperopia plus my absolute. Into this plus this, okay, and then the total. So I know the manifest hyperopia. But I may pay total hyperopia there. But if I want the total hyperopia there. A latent na ciliary muscle no a correct here, and it is +1 plus the manifest in a pure refractioning. This is what we call total hyperopia. So I think this is very simple enough. And I know of latent hyperopia, you know of manifest hyperopia, you know of facultative hyperopia, you know of absolute hyperopia, and you know of total hyperopia. Whenever I see latent hyperopia, depend on a hyperop or a particular number of hyperopia. But ciliary muscle no main and ciliary muscle not corrected about +1. I mean free. That is called the latent hyperopia. If I want to break this one and reveal that, I will use cycloplegic refraction and use atropine to polarize the ciliary muscle. So be a +1 in your mommy. Into that point, it's a refraction now. I go +5. You understand? Because we use cycloplegia, and the cycloplegia polarize the ciliary muscle into one to mean +1 beam. So whenever I do, no, we manifest by being total if I polarize it. You understand? So that is latent hyperopia. So if I want the total hyperopia there, it is the latent hyperopia plus the manifest hyperopia in the refraction. But we can manifest there, many facultative hyperopia plus the absolute hyperopia. And the facultative, no, Mr. Alex, it means accommodation effort, it may change accommodation, with accommodation, between let me focus now bring kakra. But if you don't go and my man who clearly into it might try to have some point kakra, that is called facultative hyperopia. A back kakra on mass and top red and so, and that is called the absolute hyperopia. So if I want to manifest hyperopia, it is absolute hyperopia plus facultative hyperopia. That is all. Thank you.